Oh, hello, Whovians. I understand you're watching me. Well, I'm watching you too. How much is this? Well, love it.
Hello and welcome. Yes, we are the Whovians and we have gathered here once again. Yes, there's a great bunch of us today. We really have a great gang here. I mean, we've got Dr. Horror here. We'll come to in a bit. Yes, our special guest. So today, what are we going to talk about? Well, it's Jon Pertwee's last story. It's got Sarah Jane. It's got spiders. It's got the Brigadier. It is the one and only Planet of the Spiders. So let's see who is frightened of the spiders. And let's go to Jason. Let's start off with Jason. Go ahead, Jason.
Planet of the Spiders. Definitely another great episode. Last story of Jon Pertwee's story as the Third Doctor. My guess is that it was a sequel from Green Death with the blue crystal idea, because when the Doctor went to Meadowberry Street back in Green Death. The story, in my opinion, definitely great, but I definitely quite enjoy the story. I'm not scared of spiders on this one. Sarah Jane, definitely great performance from home. The Doctor, always a great performance. Always love how he's always in his fighting modes against the bad guys and stuff like that. I definitely love the chasing one. With the whole chasing scene going on in part 2, that is what I really love about that. We must be a bit of like a James Bond kind of theme or whatever. I mean, I think the bad guy was like driving the hovercraft or whatever it was, and Brigadier and the rest of the guys like Brigadier and Benton was driving the Betsy, and while the Doctor and Sarah Jane were flying up there in the sky, and then later on that got switched up that the villain took the flying machine, and then it was Doctor and Sarah Jane using the hovercraft. I mean, with even I feel sorry for the cop himself, the policeman. I mean, poor policeman. I mean, trying to convince others what he was trying to see, but then it was like, never mind. But the story itself was definitely great. Even the regeneration and even the twist plot of Tolji, who Tolji really was Campo. Tolji was just the image of Campo's future, I guess. And definitely great story. I definitely quite enjoy it. I would give it a 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10. Thank you, Jason. Yes, straight out the gate with a 10. That's how I like it, yes. Now let's go over and see what Craig has to say.
I really enjoyed this Jon Pertwee story. It's probably one of my favourite Jon Pertwees. My favourite episode is probably the last final part, and especially when he regenerates with the Brigadier, and I find it quite emotional. And I liked Campo as a character. That whole twist that he with the two characters was really good. I loved the is it when he went into the Queen's chamber and the Metabolist with the crystal, and I love that aspect of Jon Pertwee's stories. And the Great Queen was just, the voice was just really kind of it just kind of gives me shivers sometimes when I hear the loud noise, and to see like Doctor Who actually quite vulnerable.
You do not speak like a two-leg.
And to actually face his fears was pretty cool. And it was a good send-off for Jon Pertwee as well, I thought, as a story, as a six-parter. And overall, I'd give it a 9.5 out of 10.
A 9.5 out of 10 from Craig. Now, he hasn't got 8 legs, but he definitely likes sitting in the dark. It's Connor. Go ahead, Connor.
This is definitely one of my favourites of Jon Pertwee. Phenomenal performance from him for his last serial. I thought that all the characters were very enjoyable, which is quite rare when you have such a large, expansive cast as this did. Part 2 was great. I love the whole entire chase scene, how it included all of the vehicles from Pertwee's era and introduced a new one in the helicopter. It's a brilliant overall story, well written by Robert Sloman and Barry Letts, who also contributed but was uncredited. Yeah, I think in Lethbridge Stewart just all made the cast, and I did like the sort of time lording with Cameron. That was sort of a surprise for Part 6. Yeah, great overall story. I thought the spiders were well done. I did like the voices, one of which was voiced by Roger Delgado's wife, I believe. Yeah, I'll give this story a 9 out of 10.
A 9 out of 10. Thank you, Connor. Now let's go over to our very own Jimmy. Go ahead, Jimmy.
When I first started watching Doctor Who, Pertwee was my first doctor. When I first watched this years ago, it was sad to see him go. He was a doctor for a long time. I enjoy it now on a much different level than I enjoyed it then. The character Rinpoche, R-I-M as in Michael, P-O-C-H-E. Well, Rinpoche, R-I-N as in Nicholas, P-O-C-H-E, is a title given to Tibetan lamas. And the episode aired in 1974. In 1973, Alan Watts died. Alan Watts was an Anglican priest who was an expert in Eastern religions, Buddhism, Hinduism, Taoism. He wrote many books, many articles, did many lectures, a lot of videos on YouTube, all about Eastern philosophy, especially Buddhism, Zen Buddhism. I have a lot of his books. Tao, The Watercourse Way is one of my favorite books. And Buddhism is throughout this episode. One of the things about Buddhism is that they teach that an enlightened being is a master of time. And that is because the enlightened being ceases all cravings, including the craving for existence and the craving for non-existence. And since they neither crave to exist nor crave not to exist, time does not affect them, they affect time. They also cease the craving for rebirths. So they are beyond time and beyond the effect of time, such as Rinpoche. I like that the Brigadier was back. Nicholas Courtney's acting was great. I did not like what they did with the Brigadier. Whereas before, the Brigadier, he was sharp as a cookie on his toes. Here, the Brigadier is Googling at dancing girls off camera. He doesn't understand simple scientific principles. He's more of a buffoon character. But Nicholas Courtney's acting brings a dignity. And then, of course, there's the doctor himself. It's his ego that basically brought about his demise. He had to confront his ego. And you watch this doctor throughout. This doctor does have a pretty powerful ego. And again, Pertwee's acting and Pertwee's ending and the ensemble cast around him, Sarah Jane, the Brigadier. It's very sad to watch, very sad to watch his parting. And then again, it was nice to see him come back in the Five Doctors and Dimensions in Time. But because of what they did to the Brigadier's character, I'd have to give it a 9.
Thank you, Jimmy. And give a thumbs up to Jimmy because he does a great job at editing our videos. So give him a thumbs up. Go on. Yeah, that's it. And now let's go over to Beef Dad. Go ahead, Beef Dad. Are you afraid of spiders?
I wasn't. I remember at the time They gave everybody the creeps. My sister absolutely refused to watch Doctor Who after this, because she has a real bad case of arachnophobia. There was some interesting people in it. John Durst, that played Lupton, who was basically the ringleader of the people who were trying to bring the spiders to Earth, was well known for playing creepy villains at the time. In fact, he was barely off the television screen, being unpleasant and creepy. Loved him. Gareth Hunt played Arak, and Gareth Hunt, who became Rhyming Slang, he went on to the New Avengers. He is another actor who was barely off the British television screens at that period of time. Also nice and not above buying you a drink in a bar. Campo, I loved Campo, the old man, who was quite possibly the same. In fact, it would appear that he is the same guy as he is a Time Lord that used to advise the Doctor when the Doctor was younger. He was an old hermit up in the hills, and the Doctor finally recognises him. Mike Yates and Benson, yes, as always, they very seldom change. I quite enjoyed the Brigadier, not necessarily knowing everything and basically being a little bit confused by some of the goings on, because he was having problems reconciling Buddhism and religious side of it with another planet. It doesn't really work. Elizabeth Sladen was absolutely at her best. She was brilliant. And the regenerations, I loved the chase. I absolutely loved the chase. The chase was wonderful, and it basically gave Pertwee the chance to do all of the stuff, all of the adventurous stuff that he loved doing. He loved doing all that stuff, and this one really was an opportunity to give him everything to do. That was great fun. I particularly enjoyed the part where he ran over the tramp with the hovercraft. That was probably one of the funniest things I've seen in Doctor Who in a long time. And the regeneration scene, no big surprise for the Brigadier. Just was basically interested to see what the Doctor was going to look like in the next incarnation, which was great fun. And it was really well done, and it was odd. I think it's the first time I can remember it happening that the new Doctor was uncredited in the credits, and I think that was the first time I can remember that ever happening. In fact, one of the few times I can remember it happening, because I'm pretty sure that the Doctor was credited after every incarnation. Each regeneration differs. It's a romp in places. In other places, it actually makes you think. For me, it gets a 9.75.
A 9.75? Well, come on, give it a 10. Come on.
All right, then, you can have a 10.
Yay, a 10!
Of course!
And now let's go over, because he's dying to talk about his books. I know he is. It's our very own librarian, Harry. Go ahead, Harry.
Well, thank you, Alec. As you mentioned, I do have the book, Turn 6 novelization. Turn 6 a little interesting start with it. He goes to the Amazon, where Jo Grant and her husband are, and that's where you find out that the natives down there are very upset about the fact that the crystal is there. It seems as though things that they don't like are happening to the tribe, and they blame it on the crystal. So Jo has only two options. Either send the crystal back to Unit HQ, or risk the party not being able to go further on their expedition. So the crystal is sent back to Unit HQ. Among other things that Terrence brings out is he does a marvelous job describing the chase scene episode 2. And that whole scene was actually worked out with Barry Letts and Jon Pertwee using all those gadgets, because they were something that had been left over, except for the Whomobile, that John had been wanting to use for some time. They just never been able to find a story to use it. So Barry and John sat down, plotted out this whole chase sequence using all these extra props, using the Whomobile, Bessie, the gyrocopter, the hovercraft, the motor launch. All those items had been either something Barry had wanted and John had wanted to use the story, but had been unable to. Interesting little tidbit, a couple of interesting tidbits I found out. One, they had to do a lot of work with Liz Sladen on this story because Liz actually had a bad case of fear of spiders. They had to actually work with her using small models and building up to the size model of the Queen, just so that she could actually handle having a spider model on her back, because she could not stand the idea of spiders. She was deathly afraid of them. Another item mentioned, Kismet Delgado. Roger Delgado's wife, she did the voice of the Great One. All praise to the Great One, as the spiders would put it. The Mad Great Spider. It was Kismet who they brought in to do this as a tribute to her late husband, Roger Delgado, because originally this story was supposed to have been a lot different. It was supposed to have been a lot different. That's the reason why they brought Kismet in, because they wanted to do a way of bringing in, they couldn't bring Roger in for the finale, so they brought Kismet in. As far as a rating, the story, I give it 9. The book, what can I say? Terrence 6. Man knows how to write a story. 10, as far as the book is concerned. If you don't have the book in your library, get it. You won't be sorry.
So there you are. Get the book. Now, he's been a bit unwell today. Yes, he's been a bit unwell. And we can tell this because he's been sitting there drinking tea. Yeah. It's the mustache guy. It's Mr. Lee Wilson. Go ahead, Lee.
Two of my earliest memories of Doctor Who is two Pertwee memories. It was watching the Time Warrior and the Planet of Spiders. And Planet of Spiders stuck in my mind. I was only 4 at the time. And people may disagree with that, but I was 4 at the time. It's so stuck in my memory, this story, because of the Regeneration's Farewell Pertwee, which was done so superbly done. Yeah, a 6-parter, as people know, I'm not a fan of long, drawn-out stories, but this one does work. And episode 2, which was nearly all the chase scene, that was just, as I said, Pertwee just went for it. He enjoyed every minute of that, and you could just see he enjoyed every minute of that. Liz Sladen, she's on top form again. Classic companion. Wonderful, sorely missed. The spiders, for the time, good. Yeah, but it's a bit dated now. But at the time, that's what they could do with at the time. It was passable. Lupton, a brilliant villain. Last scene laid on the floor, and did he die or could he come back? We don't know. Mike Yates, never seen again, apart from the Phantom thing in the 5 Doctors. But I was just wondering with the Choji and Campo thing, if he was a projection of Campo, was Choji a sort of watcher, as Tom Baker had? I don't know. We might have to discuss that. I don't know. But I think he was a sort of a watcher. But Choji, played by Kevin Lindsay, who we all know is the ultimate Sontaran Lynx. And there he is playing an Asian Tibetan monk, which they did in those days in the 70s. Have you ever got blacked up or, they made you look Asian? But I love this story. It's brilliant. All, as Jimmy said, the Buddhism. everything all the way through it. It's a brilliant farewell to Pertwee, and a good welcome for Tom Baker as well. The regeneration. It was quick. People always complain about a quick regeneration, but that for me is one of the best regenerations. You know, a tear, Sarah Jane. But I am going to give it a 10 because I absolutely love this one.
Thank you, Lee. So Lee loves it. It's a 10 from Lee. Now, let's go over to a new arrival. Let's go over to Dr. Horror. Go ahead, Dr. Horror.
Thank you, Al. It's great to be here with the rest of you Whovians. As you guys well know, I loved my horror films, but I also loved my Doctor Who. So, we're at the Planet of the Spiders. You know, you got a bunch of you guys pretty much said everything I was going to say. I mean, of course I love the chase scene. You know, trying to think of something different to say. I mean, you had Jimmy was saying, the monk scenes were great, the monk cult. I did, there were some pretty funny, little spurts here and there, like you got the doctor telling the brigadier, no, you'll shoot my car, that was pretty cool, man. That chase scene, you'll never get nothing like that again in Doctor Who, never. I wouldn't bet on it, man. It's beautiful. If you go look on YouTube, somebody put together the Benny Hill theme going along with it. It's really, really entertaining. You guys should check it out. As for the spiders, the 8 legs, yeah, they're a bit cheesy looking, but, effective. Didn't really dig the voices, but hey, what are you going to do? They were still creepy as hell. I have Halloween decorations that look exactly like those spiders, so I will whip them out when Halloween time comes around. But a decent effect, a really, really decent effect for the Great One. Decent effect. I did like the way she looked. As far as the doctor goes with regenerate. This is a really sad time. Tom Pertwee, one of the great doctors. It's a shame. The only point I can hold against this story, honestly, is that it didn't feature the Master, and we know why. But it's just a shame that this story did. I'm sure Pertwee would have wanted it that way, It's just it's just 6 episodes, or is it too long? I don't think so. Not for this one. There was a lot of different. You had a lot of different things going on, Like I was saying with the spiders. I do like the idea of the spiders actually being, from Earth, and they got mutated or whatever from radiation or the crystals or whatever. That's a pretty cool idea. I'd like to see some of that in the newer Doctor Who. I'd like to revisit these spiders again, or see if there's some around still or whatever. I know we did recently get a spider episode a couple years back. Was okay, but this is great. Doctor Who definitely needs a real scary spider episode again. It definitely does, because people hate spiders. I personally don't mind them, but I know people have that fear, that arachnophobia. And nothing is better than seeing people scared. I love people being scared, and enjoying their time watching their movies or their Doctor Who. So definitely, guys, you guys pretty much said it all. Even Mustache down there, definitely the Beef Dad guy and the Jimmy and Harry. Like, you guys pretty much said it all. This episode's a 10. I would only give it a higher rating. I know that would be impossible. It just sucks that it could not feature the Master. It's the only thing that really sucks. Delgado was my favorite Master. We all have our favorites. He was my favorite Master. Loved him with the cigars. So it's just a shame he wasn't included. That's all I have on that. So it's a 10 out of 10, Alec. Thanks for having me here, buddy.
Thank you for being here, Dr. Horror. And it was Kill the Moon that had the spiders a few years ago.
Yes.
Yeah, Kill the Moon, yeah. And now let's go over to see what Daniel has to say about Planet of the Spiders.
I liked this episode too, I think it was pretty good. I just, it was kind of sad to see Jon Pertwee leave, though. That really does suck, he was one of my favorite doctors.
What would you give it out of 10?
I give it like a 5 out of, no, wait. I give it an 8 out of 10, yeah.
An 8 out of 10, thank you. So, what do I think? Well, oh, come on. It's Sarah Jane, it's Jon Pertwee. You're asking me what I think about it? No, go on. It's a 10, of course it's a 10. I love it, it's brilliant. It's great, it's Jon Pertwee, as I say, it's Sarah Jane. They're at their best. Sarah Jane really is at her best in this. She really generally is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a great story. I think the spiders, yeah, well, they're a project of their time, aren't they? They could have been, they would have been better today. Of course they would have been. But I still think they're good for the time they were done in. I still think that. I mean, you got the Brigadier in this as well. And it's just, has anybody mentioned Tommy? No, no one's mentioned Tommy. No, who's just a great character. I thought well acted as well. I thought the supporting cast was very good. I really did. No, and the regeneration scene is one of my favorites. It definitely is one of my favorites. It's probably, I would say it's probably in my top 3. I would say. I think maybe Christopher Eccleston's is number 1, maybe. But I would definitely put this one up at number 3 or number 2. So it's definitely a 10 from me. And now I'm going to throw the floor open to whoever wants to.
As I mentioned earlier, Alex, as we've mentioned, Roger Delgado was originally supposed to be in this story until his tragic death during the shooting of Frontier in Space, or shortly thereafter. The original plan for the story, what little I've been able to dig up, is that it was going to be a battle between the Doctor and the Master. And it was going to turn out that the two were actually related, in a sense, almost like brothers. And that when the Master realized what he was doing was going to cause so much devastation, he just couldn't take it, so he sacrificed himself. Well, sent the Doctor off, which in a sense caused his regeneration. And that was the way they were going to end the run for the Third Doctor originally. But with Roger's death, they could not do it. So when they came up with this idea of the spiders, and they wanted to do a great spider who would be, in a sense, the one above them all, they asked Kismet to come in and attribute to her husband and do the voice of the Great One. And she took it upon herself, and she pulls it off magnificently. I mean, I don't think anybody else could have done the same, but that same echo, that same feel of horror that Kismet did in her sequences as the Great One compared to anybody else. But again, that's just partially my opinion, but as I said, as they mentioned in the story, all praise to the Great One!
You should have got the job, Harry. You should have got the job.
He should have got the job. I'm glad Harry brought that up with Delgado. That was always the mystery. Are the Master and the Doctor related in some ways? There's always these, scripts, even from the movie, this and that they are related here and there. Do we ever get that answer? Do we want that answer? Or do we like to keep it a mystery?
But was it going to say that in Planet of Fire, wasn't it? Planet of Fire, they had it in, didn't they? Yeah. But did they cut it or something?
I think cut it.
Yeah,
when it was in the Blue Flame, I'm sure they cut it.
I think it's best to keep it a mystery. Always keep it a mystery. I don't think anybody at this time that does the show has the right to decide if to break that mystery between the Master and the Doctor, even currently. Of course, we do want some answers answered, okay? We do want some answers. We can have a whole debate on what we would love to know about certain stories, especially with the Stephen Moffat era, definitely. Yeah, I appreciate, I like I said before, I would have just loved if Delgado was able. I don't think it would have been right to introduce a new Master in the story. It would have had to be Delgado, definitely. That just would have made it perfect. That would have been the cherry on the cupcake for me.
There's a little scene in there with Sergeant Benson where it's a nice little scene where he sort of he offers to lay his life down because he's expendable. Things like that, just brilliant. Benton's one of the best characters in Doctor Who. Although the Eight Legs did have returned in the World Doctor Who, in the audios with the Eighth Doctor. So if you want to catch them, World Wide Web, it's called. Try and get your tongue around that one.
I was actually going to mention that I forgot about Professor Clegg and the use of telekinesis in the, I think it was the opening part or the opening 2 parts, and how much an impact it played on the story actually when he could tell the future and the past of certain objects. I thought that when the Doctor said that, these sorts of skills lie dormant in all of us, that was a very interesting quote, and one that should be remembered, I think. So yeah, I quite enjoyed that aspect of it.
Also, the actor playing Professor Clegg was in the Tomb of the Cybermen. He was also in Androids of Dara. So he got about a bit.
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
Anybody else got anything to add?
Well, I do want to add up to the fact that when you just mentioned about Tom, like how his character was, like how he started out slow, and then when he later on took the blue crystal, how that ended up affecting him, how his mind, like he gains more intelligence, and when he was like reading the books, like each book each time, and then how the other meditators tried to attack him, and it just bounces off from him, and how his character, it showed how impact this blue crystal does, of like how it creates with the spiders as well, how it changed the spiders into these giant spiders, and even especially the great one who had this huge massive crystals, a bunch of these crystals top of it, and how much power it was gaining, and how the fact that the Doctor who had the crystal, when it went over into the pile of the crystals, how much effect it destroyed the spider itself, and find that pretty interesting. Also the fact that the villagers that used to be from Earth, I'm guessing, that was in Metaspheres 3 for 400 years, even the same amount with the spiders.
One last thing, Alan. The whole thing with the Tibetan stuff, the chanting and meditation, everything, that was something Barry Letts was very much into. And he incorporated that into the story for the finale to bring about, as he was always trying to do, the idea that some of the deadliest monsters that humanity could have come from the recesses of their own mind.
And as always, I would like to thank everybody here for joining me, especially Dr. Horror. It's an honor to have Dr. Horror on. And I would like to thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment. What do you think about this final adventure for the Third Doctor? What do you think? What do you have to say? Go on, tell us in the box below. And as always, we will see you next time. Take care, look after yourself, stay happy, and more importantly, keep on hooing.